After nearly 2 weeks of gripes, goodbye, Brenda Snipes. She resigns after the Florida Senate race ends. Meanwhile, Stacey Abrams asked the self-obsessed snobs of Hollywood not to boycott Georgia because she lost. Yep, some stars have threatened to boycott the state because the vote that made Brian Kemp the winner still stands. Ron Perlman, Alyssa Milano, Bradley Whitford. Georgia's really going to miss you guys. So now we know how to keep pompous Hollywood crybabies out of our state. Win elections. This is a better incentive than lower taxes and safer streets. A vote for a Republican means Alec Baldwin won't punch locals in the face. A vote against a leftist means you'll never run into Jim Carrey weeping in the park. But clearly, this is another tantrum disguised as a principled stand. It's easy to boycott something you don't need. Something tells me Ms. Milano or Mr. Perlman didn't have lucrative projects lined up in Savannah. It's pure destructive selfishness. Let's push boycotts that don't affect me, but harms the economy that supports millions of middle-class Americans. Hell, I'll just stay in Bel Air. The royalties from Full House will pay for my bean paste facials. And I still get to virtue signal on Twitter. Boycotting a state is an even sadder version of I'm moving to Canada. Because even if they sneak into Georgia, they never move to Canada. But what's great, it's far easier to boycott a body of work than a body of land. Everyone can do it. And once Alyssa or Bradford star in anything beyond a tweet, Georgians can exercise their rights too. All right, Juan, how can we not please you guys? You basically did get a blue wave. Let's face it, close to 40 seats. Should be happy. Yeah. I mean, I would be happy, but they're still, like, mad. They're going to boycott Georgia. You
must have missed Chris Wallace's interview with Donald Trump.
I was out drinking.
Oh, on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, geez.
Well, I was coming home, so technically.
Oh, that's Saturday night?
Yes. There's a replay on Sunday night.
Oh, well, anyway, but the president said he won. He said that he won the Senate. That's what counts. And when Chris said, well, what about the House? And he could lose like 36 seats. He said, no, you didn't hear me. We won. We won the Senate.
But he's being an optimist. But on the other side, the Democrats are still mad. They're still angry, even winning that many seats. And what is it?
No.
How many governorships? Seven governorships?
You're confusing what happened in Georgia. It wasn't the Senate seat in Georgia. I don't think that was an issue. I think it was the governorship.
Yes.
The gubernatorial race.
Yeah.
And there you see Stacey Abrams saying that Brian Kemp, who was also Secretary of State, somehow managed to push people out.
What I'm saying is you can't win them all, so don't be a sore loser. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, well, I think that's kind of dirty tactics, but I'll leave the rest.
Dirty? Okay. All right. Jesse?
I just like in the monologue you admitted that you too get facials. So.
Well, also, I wanted to ask you how you like the bean paste facial. I've never seen that.
Yeah, I usually go a pumpkin spice facial. The bean one I haven't tried yet, but it would do you well. I think Democrats.
Wait, first of all, are you going to miss Miss Snipes?
Sneaky?
Yeah.
She retired.
I know.
But I'm sure she'll pop up somewhere on my feed. I will miss her dearly. But I think, Greg, Democrats always expect to win for a few reasons. One, they live in a bubble, a social bubble and a media bubble. Two, they think controlling government is their rightful destiny because they believe they're progressives and it's progress. And also, they believe their whole governing philosophy is about controlling government, that they're supposed to be in charge. And then Democrats believe this is life and death, good versus evil. So when they lose, it is a soul-crushing loss. That's why they have to question each loss and say, well, it's illegitimate. It's like therapy for them. In fact, most Republicans, when they win, Democrats don't think they're legitimate at all. If you think and you go back, look at Bush in 2000. Look at Trump in 2016. Look at all the Scott Walker elections. They question his legitimacy. Look, you have Kemp now, DeSantis, and Scott, and every single time there's an excuse from Democrats. It's gerrymandering, it's racism, it's sexism, it's the Russians, it's voter suppression. Hillary Clinton had, 60 excuses for her loss? So in the grand scheme of things, you look at Florida and you think in the last couple elections there, you've had tons of shenanigans by people like Sneaky Snipes. Ballots were destroyed. Ballots were miscounted. They found ballots. Things are done in secret. And now judges have to come in and say, guys, knock it off. And Republicans say, things are getting fishy. This could be some kind of fraud taking place. And then Republicans are cast as conspiracy theorists. How dare you question an election? You're not allowed to do that. But if you look at the poll, Economist poll said 67% of Democrats, 67% believe that Russians tampered with votes to elect Donald Trump in 2016. Now, that's just false. Votes were never tampered with, yet 2/3 of Democrats believe in that conspiracy.
Could I, not helping that is, this is an interview Jake Tapper did with Ms. Abrams about the legitimacy of the election.
Do you think that there was deliberate interference in the election?
Yes. And I believe it began 8 years ago with the systematic disenfranchisement of more than 1 million voters.
Is he the legitimate governor-elect of Georgia?
He is the person who won an adequate number of votes
But that's
to become the governor.
You're not using the word legitimate. Is he the legitimate governor-elect of Georgia?
He is the legal governor of Georgia.
God.
What do you think, Dana?
I think a couple of things. I read the Weekly Standard, had an editorial today talking about these claims about that she's making that she says were happening in Georgia. But if you go through them one by one, they're talking about people who were purged off of the rolls.
Right.
That's like if that was 1.5 million, but why was it so many? It was people that died, people that moved, and there was a lawsuit in 2015 that meant that nobody came off the rolls that year. So this is the first year that you see it. So it looks like it's double. And I didn't know that until I read something.
I didn't know that until you read
it.
This is what's great about Dana is I didn't have to read that article.
Yeah, you didn't have to read it. But I'm sure Jesse read it before I did.
Weekly Standard subscriber.
I do think that's right.
Yeah, you bought me the subscription.
I know. Do you love it?
I love it. That and National
Cartoons
Review.
are great. So the president and others were saying that there was voter fraud in Florida and maybe in Georgia too. That was a suggestion. The Democrats are saying there's voter suppression. Neither are presenting adequate evidence for either. And so I don't know what happens going forward. I do think about somebody like a Brenda Snipes. We can make fun of her or whatever. And it looked like some incompetence, but she gets it done in the end. And now she's retiring. But you think about who's willing to serve their communities, these public servants. And like we have to figure out a way to support them and to provide them with what they need and the resources that they need, or we have to go to the robot.
The robots. I say the robots, Katie. They'll take care of all of this.
Did you see the robot anchor that came out in China?
Oh, yes.
It looked a lot like you, Greg.
Thank you.
I'll
take that as a compliment. I'm very smooth.
You are very smooth. That's true.
It's the facial.
Yes, but there are legitimate questions about what happened maybe in Georgia, but also in Florida in terms of the voter rolls not being cleaned up. Brenda Snipes got sued also for having people who were 114 years old on her rolls, for people who had left the county, all those things. And so the follow-up has to be not just one of appointing someone new, but the Secretary of State office, especially in Florida for Broward and Palm Beach counties, and pushing them to say, okay, 2020 is coming. This type of behavior actually does undermine democracy, as we always hear about. So we have to make sure that things are cleaned up for the presidential election so it doesn't come down to 2 counties that have repeatedly had problems for a decade making these determinations and questions about where the ballots were found and why they're being transported in private vehicles and that kind of thing.
Can I say one other thing, though, about Stacey Abrams? So she did something pretty remarkable. She's a progressive liberal, and she came pretty close in Georgia.
Yeah.
So it's like, Georgia's not going to change overnight.
Yeah.
But she says she wants to run again. So can she figure out a way, how can she make up those 60,000 votes or whatever it is? Like, can she find 60,000 votes so that she could become the legitimate winner?
And she did a nice thing where she said, boycotting Georgia is stupid, don't do it. I mean, she didn't encourage that sort of behavior.
And now you have a runoff, I think, for Secretary of State in Georgia. And I think that's really important because even Jimmy Carter, I guess that doesn't mean much with you guys, but Jimmy Carter,
I love Jimmy,
the former president, said Kemp should have never been in charge of the election in which he was competing. I mean,
well, can I just say something about what Dana said about Stacey Abrams? I think she undermines her own case when she's not willing to just accept the results with class and move on, because she does deserve a lot of credit for the job that she did there. And by her saying it was stolen or that these things happened, she actually delegitimizes all of the hard work she put in and the votes that she got.
Yeah. Well, I would like to add at the end of this segment that this might be the last recount segment we do in 2 years.
Maybe.
Isn't that great?
We still have the caravan, don't we?
We do have the caravan. Exactly. 3 segments on the caravan, Jesse.